The Grand Council of the Infinite Sky assembled beneath the mirrored vaults of the nebular citadel, a structure so ancient that even stars had risen and died since its foundation was laid. The air shimmered with resonance fields. Voices were transmitted through layers of telepathic harmonics and scent-coded waves. The galaxy's most advanced minds were present, the crystalline Zealoth with their refracted thought patterns, the towering Vornai encased in symbiotic armor, the serene Orans whose bodies were woven from living light. Each species had arrived in ceremonial gravity ships that bent space itself into tribute. And then, near the end of the long procession, a small, unimpressive vessel entered orbit. It bore the markings of Terra, a world circling an unremarkable yellow star on the spiral's edge. Its delegates walked awkwardly, their joints hinged and fragile. Their translator devices flickered with static. They smelled faintly of carbon and oxygen, a chemical simplicity that almost bordered on insult among the higher beings. Still, the humans entered the hall with quiet dignity. Ambassador Mira Halden led them, her uniform unadorned except for a single blue insignia over her heart. Behind her stood Dr. Elias Kaur, astrophysicist and diplomat, whose mind carried both awe and apprehension. They paused beneath the celestial canopy, a dome that reflected the stars of 1,000 civilizations. From his floating dais, the Vornai High Marshal emitted a low grinding sound, translated as amusement. "So these are the Terrans," he said. "Flesh-born primitives from a backwater spiral. Their species hasn't yet transcended death, I presume." Laughter, harmonic and cruel, rippled through the assembly. The humans did not respond. The presiding arbiter, an Orion whose body shimmered like dawnlight, raised her radiant hand. "Let them speak. The conquered requires fair hearing, even for the unevolved." Mira inclined her head respectfully, though her pulse thundered in her ears. "We come not to beg for place," she said softly, "only to share what we have learned." Elias stepped forward, connecting a data sphere to the council's light stream. Holographic images flared, the Earth rising above the moon, ships built by human hands cutting through void, the slow, defiant crawl of a species that refused extinction. "We've walked through our own darkness," Elias said. "We've torn ourselves apart, and yet we stand every time. We thought the stars would never know us. Yet here we are." A murmur of bemusement spread through the council. The Zealoth refracted light in sharp pulses, forming a collective judgment. Persistence, a crude survival trait, admirable yet irrelevant to the order of higher law. The humans exchanged glances. They had expected this. Mira looked up at the endless ceiling, at the stars shining faintly through the transparent dome. She thought of her mother's words back on Earth. "When they look down on you, look further up." So she did. "You call us primitive," she said. "But perhaps it's because we still remember what it's like to fight for every breath. We still feel. We still dream, even when logic says not to." The silence that followed was heavy and curious. The council had seen empires rise and vanish in mathematical precision. But this pulse of raw human spirit, felt different. The presiding arbiter's light dimmed thoughtfully. "Very well, Terran. You may remain under observation, but remember this. The laws that govern the stars have stood for eons. You are here to learn them, not rewrite them." Mira bowed, understood. But Elias, his gaze fixed on the flickering starlight, whispered quietly, "Every law begins as a story someone once believed couldn't change." The council adjourned. The humans left the citadel, the echoes of laughter trailing behind them like fading comets. Yet deep within the ship Aurora's Reach, humanity's embassy vessel, a silent message pulsed across encrypted Terran networks. Phase 1 complete. They underestimate us. And beyond the edge of known space, in the shadows between galaxies, the engines of 1,000 human ships began to stir, each carrying the same defiant promise. They will learn who we are. The Aurora's Reach drifted through the ink of the cosmos, a tiny flame amid the infinite. Inside, silence ruled, broken only by the soft hum of engines and the pulse of encrypted transmissions bouncing between decks. Mira Halden stood by the viewing bay, her reflection framed by starlight. Below her, the planet Vorthus Prime glowed, a world of cities sculpted from crystal, each structure resonating with harmonic energy. It was beautiful. It was ancient, And it was dangerous. The Galactic Concord had granted humanity observer status, a polite term meaning watch but never touch. They were allowed to witness the work of the greater species but forbidden from influencing, questioning, or altering anything. Elias Core joined her, his eyes tired but bright. "I've been studying their law of continuum," he said. "The foundation of their galactic order," Mira turned. "And," he exhaled, "it's elegant, but it's built on fear. They forbid interference with lower civilizations not out of mercy, but because they fear the chaos of change. To them, evolution is a threat unless it's predictable." Mira's expression hardened. "So we're the unpredictable variable." "Exactly." Elias smiled faintly. "And you know what chaos does, Mira?" "It spreads," she didn't smile back. "Spreading chaos got us to the stars," she murmured. "Maybe it's what we are." Outside, the planet shimmered like a living gem. The Concord called it the beacon of harmony. But Mira had already learned that harmony often meant silence, and silence often hid chains. Later, the crew assembled in the central chamber. Around the table sat 8 humans, scientists, linguists, engineers, and 1 soldier, Commander Rael Toven. Rael's voice was steady. "Intelligence confirms what Elias suspected. The Concord enforces peace through suppression. Entire species are kept in developmental stasis. Technological caps, cultural dampers. They decide who grows, who stagnates." A chill passed through the room. Elias leaned forward. "They've built a galaxy that never questions itself. That's why they fear us. We question everything." Mira folded her arms. "We came to learn, not to start a war." Rael's gaze was unflinching. "Sometimes learning is the first act of rebellion." Days turned to weeks. Humans studied, listened, adapted. Their minds soaked in alien mathematics and star law like dry earth drinking rain. And quietly they began to see patterns, gaps in the supposedly perfect structure of galactic law. One evening, Mira was invited to a private convocation hosted by the Orion Arbiter herself, Seren of the Dawnlight. The hall was vast and filled with shimmering beings. Seren's form was a cascade of light and color, each shift echoing a thought. "Ambassador Halden," she said, voice a melody. "Your kind intrigues us. You burn so bright yet so brief. Tell me, what drives a species so fragile to reach the stars?" Mira hesitated. The answer wasn't in any diplomatic manual. "Because," she said softly, "we're always running out of time. Every human knows life is short. That's why we reach. That's why we refuse to stop." The Arbiter's light dimmed contemplatively. "Curious. You find strength in mortality. We seek to escape it. Maybe that's why we'll never be like you," Mira replied. "And maybe that's why we'll change you." A shimmer rippled through the chamber, shock, perhaps even admiration. The Arbiter said nothing further. But as Mira turned to leave, Serene's final whisper lingered in her mind, a telepathic resonance only she could hear. "Be careful, Terran. The flame that defies the void often burns alone." That night, Mira returned to the Aurora's reach. The stars beyond the viewport pulsed faintly, as though listening. Elias met her at the command deck. "You look shaken," he said gently. "She warned me," Mira whispered. "They're watching us. Every step, every word, but I don't think it's fear anymore." "What is it then?" "Wonder," she said. "And something else, envy." Elias nodded slowly. "Then we've already begun." In the silence of deep space, the humans gathered their findings, mapping the hidden architecture of galactic order. The data revealed a truth no other race dared to see. The laws of continuum were not eternal. They were fragile code, etched by beings long gone, maintained by those too afraid to change them. Mira stared at the data streams and whispered the words that would echo through human history. "If they built the laws," she said, "then we can unbuild them." And somewhere in the endless dark, the first spark of rebellion flared, quiet, steady, human. The galaxy was too vast to notice a single spark, until it wasn't. At first, the data leaks seemed trivial. A few corrupted archives here, a string of missing codices there. But within a month, whispers began to ripple through the Concord's inner channels. Someone was tampering with the laws of continuum, and the whispers all traced back to one improbable origin: human encryption. Inside the Aurora's reach, the air was thick with urgency. Holographic displays filled the command deck, their light painting restless faces. Elias Core leaned over the console, voice tense. They've traced the first breach to our communications with the Larathi scholars. We were too open, too curious. Mira's tone was calm but sharp. Curiosity is what we are. They knew that when they invited us. Rael Tovin stepped forward, his posture like a coiled spring. They didn't invite us, Ambassador. They summoned us to keep us where they could see us. Now they'll want a trial. Silence fell. The trial, in Concord law, was no ordinary proceeding. It wasn't about guilt or innocence. It was a performance of compliance. The accused either surrendered or were erased from the historical record. Entire species had vanished that way, rewritten into non-existence. Mira closed her eyes. Then we'll stand, not surrender. Elias turned toward her. You can't seriously intend to challenge the continuum itself. Why not? She said quietly. If their laws erase truth, then they aren't laws. They're cages. Rael exhaled, half in disbelief, half in awe. You're talking about defying the foundation of galactic order. Mira's gaze was steady. No, I'm talking about reminding them what order was built to protect life. The next day, the Council of the Infinite Sky reconvened. It was larger now. Representatives from 100 species gathered, drawn by curiosity, fear, and something else. Anticipation. The human delegation entered under heavy scrutiny. No applause this time. Only silence, the kind that trembled on the edge of judgment. The presiding arbiter's light glowed cold. Ambassador Halden of Terra, you stand accused of unauthorized interference with the laws of continuum. Do you deny it? Mira's voice echoed through the chamber. I don't deny it. We sought understanding, and understanding always changes things. Gasps rippled through the hall. Such defiance was unheard of. You admit to corruption of sacred code? Elias stepped forward, uninvited. Sacred? These codes are relics, unchallenged for millennia. The galaxy has mistaken stagnation for peace. The Vornai Marshal rose, massive and gleaming. Peace is order. Without it, the galaxy falls to ruin. Mira turned toward him, her voice carrying strange calm. Then perhaps it's time the galaxy learned how to rebuild itself. The Arbiter's light darkened. You speak as if you possess the power to alter what countless civilizations have preserved. Elias held up a datasphere. It flickered with shifting runes, ancient and fractal. This is your continuum core. We found anomalies, decay patterns that suggest it's degrading. You're maintaining a dying structure and calling it eternal. The hall erupted. Crystalline voices fractured the air. Telepathic murmurs collided like waves. The council was in chaos. Mira raised her hand. Her voice cut through the storm like a blade of light. We came here to learn. We did, and now we understand something you've all forgotten. Laws exist to serve life, not the other way around. Her words hung there. Ron Electric, the Arbiter, spoke again. Quieter this time. Then what do you propose, human? Reformation, Mira said. Open the continuum. Let all species contribute to its evolution. End the hierarchy of silence. The chamber fell utterly still, and then the Marshal roared, a thunder of metal and fury. This is rebellion. Mira met his glare. No, this is the beginning of freedom. By the time the humans were escorted out, the council had fractured into factions. Some species whispered of possibility, others of heresy, but the spark was lit. Back aboard the Aurora's Reach, Elias stared out at the stars. You've just set the galaxy on fire, he murmured. Mira's reflection in the viewport looked older somehow, but unbroken. Then let it burn bright enough to be seen. Rael approached with a grim smile. We've received transmissions from 3 minor civilizations. They're asking if we'll share our data. They want to learn. Mira's lips curved faintly. That's how it begins. Beyond the ship, unseen to all but the most sensitive sensors, faint ripples of energy spread outward, distortions in the continuum field itself. The laws were trembling, shifting. The universe had felt the spark. And it would never be the same again. The galaxy was no longer silent. What began as a whisper had become a storm. Across the spiral arms, the laws of continuum, once seen as sacred, unchanging truth, were being questioned. And that, in the eyes of the conquered, was an infection. Worlds that had remained dormant for eons began to stir. The Larathi, long suppressed by cultural containment protocols, broadcast messages of unity through the void. The Oran clans ceased their ritual wars and redirected their fleets toward free zones near human space. Even a few Oran envoys, glowing like morning suns, quietly sent encrypted words of support. The conquered called it the fracture of harmony. The humans called it hope. On board the Aurora's Reach, Ambassador Mira Halden watched the news unfold in the holographic stream. Her heart should have soared. Instead it ached. What have we done? Elias murmured beside her. Half the galaxy's turning against the other half. Mira didn't answer immediately. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the exhaustion in his eyes. They had all pushed too far, too fast. We didn't create the fracture, she said quietly. We only revealed it. Rael entered the room, his uniform creased from sleepless nights. Command reports conquered fleets mobilizing near the Orion Gate. They're calling it a peacekeeping action. Mira's jaw tightened. That means occupation. Rael nodded grimly. They're moving to contain the spread of rebellion before it ignites. Elias turned to Mira. If this becomes open conflict, humanity won't stand a chance. We're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Mira's eyes glimmered with quiet resolve. Then we do what we've always done when we're outnumbered. Elias, we adapt. They gathered the crew, every scientist, engineer, and diplomat aboard. The room pulsed with tension and purpose. Mira spoke with calm authority. We are not conquerors. We're not here to burn the galaxy. But if they come to silence us, then every word we speak, every act of defiance will echo for those who cannot yet speak for themselves. Rael stepped forward. We'll hold our ground as long as we can, but we'll need allies. We have them, Elias said, pulling up a star map filled with glowing points. Dozens of worlds sending us signals, some small, some powerful. They want to help. They want to choose their own path. The holographic stars reflected in Mira's eyes like tears that would not fall. Then we'll build something new. Not another empire. A council of equals. Rael gave a faint, incredulous smile. You're rewriting the galaxy's order with words. Words built every empire that ever rose, she replied softly. But this time they'll build freedom. Days later, the first fleets appeared at the edges of Terran space, sleek Concord vessels that shimmered like blades of light. The conquered issued one demand: surrender your cause and be spared. Mira's answer was transmitted across every open channel in the sector. Her voice was steady, sorrowful, and radiant. We cannot surrender what was never ours to keep. The right to think, to grow, to dream belongs to all life. If you would take that from us, you'll find we are not so easily unmade. The broadcast spread faster than the Concorde could suppress it. Billions heard her words. On distant worlds, small acts of rebellion bloomed like wildflowers through concrete. Scientists unlocking forbidden archives. Artists painting forgotten histories. Children asking questions their elders could no longer answer. The storm was growing. But within the Aurora's reach, not all was harmony. Elias noticed the first signs: corrupted transmission logs, unauthorized power transfers, strange code embedded in their communication relays. Someone was leaking their data. He confronted Rael late one night in the observation deck. The soldier's stance was guarded, his eyes unreadable. You've been contacting Concord Command, Elias said quietly. Rael didn't deny it. I've been a soldier my whole life, Elias. I believe in order. I believe in the chain of command. Elias's voice trembled with disbelief. You've been feeding them our movements? Rael's tone softened. To prevent war. To buy time. Mira's voice cut through the tension from the shadows behind them. You didn't buy time, Rael. You sold trust. The soldier turned, face-stricken. Mira, enough, she said. You did what you thought was right. That's what makes this so hard. Her words carried sorrow, not anger. But Elias saw the fracture that mirrored the galaxies, running right through them. By the time dawn light from the nearby star spilled across the deck, the Aurora's reach had already changed course, heading for an uncharted system at the edge of known space. They called it Eidolon, a silent, dark world rumored to hold remnants of the ancient civilization that had written the first continuum codes. If humanity was to survive, they would need to understand the fire they had ignited. And somewhere in that forgotten world, buried beneath the dust of eternity, waited the truth that would either save or destroy them all. The planet Eidolon was unlike any world the humans had ever seen. It was dark. Not the absence of light, but the presence of something older, deeper, watching. Its orbit carried no reflected glow. Its atmosphere was thin, whispering faint echoes through the hull of the Aurora's reach. It was as if the planet itself had been carved from silence. Mira Halden stood on the bridge as the ship descended. "Activate scanners," she ordered. Elias Core leaned forward over the console, watching the readings flicker with static. "It's strange. No electromagnetic interference, no gravity anomalies, but the instruments keep looping, like the planet doesn't want to be seen." Rail stood behind them, quiet, his guilt from the betrayal still hanging in the air like a storm that refused to pass. Mira hadn't dismissed him, but she hadn't forgiven him either. As the Aurora's reach landed, the view outside shimmered with soft, bluish dust. The crew stepped into a wasteland of stillness. The ground was smooth glass. The sky was filled with unmoving clouds. Every sound seemed to echo for miles, yet nothing stirred. Elias knelt and brushed the surface. "This isn't rock. It's vitrified material, melted and reformed. The whole planet's surface has been burned clean. Whatever happened here, it wasn't natural." Rail's voice was hushed. "Looks like a battlefield." Mira shook her head. "No, a grave." They followed the signals deeper into the wasteland until they reached a valley filled with faint luminescence. Structures rose from the glass, vast broken spires of translucent stone. They glowed softly as the humans approached, reacting to their presence. Elias's heart raced. These readings, they match the energy signatures of the continuum cores. Mira touched one of the pillars. The air rippled like water, and a voice, not mechanical but ancient, spoke in the minds of all who stood there. "We are the architects, the first to bind thought to law, the first to give order to chaos." The humans froze. The voice was calm, layered with countless tones. Mira steadied herself. "You created the laws of continuum." "Yes," the voice replied, "and we destroyed ourselves by them." The ground pulsed faintly, as if the planet's memory was awakening. Visions bloomed in the air, vast cities of light, beings of pure energy weaving codes into the fabric of the cosmos. Then chaos, collapsing worlds, rifts of uncontrolled power, and silence. Our laws were meant to preserve. But in preserving, they prevented change. Without change, creation withered. We became eternal and thus extinct. Elias's throat tightened. "So the Concord has been living in your tomb." "They took our relics and worshipped them," the voice murmured. "They forgot the truth. That law must bend or it breaks." Mira stepped forward. "Then tell us how to fix it." For a moment the air was still. Then the voice returned, softer now. "To rewrite the continuum, you must awaken the heart of Eidolon. It lies beneath this world's crust, sealed in flame. But be warned, its awakening will unmake the order of stars." Rail frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning," the voice said, "that the galaxy will be free, or fall into fire once more." The light faded. The pillars dimmed to black. Silence returned. They descended into the planet's depths through tunnels of fused stone. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became, humming with an unseen rhythm. Elias could feel it in his chest, like the pulse of a living thing. At last they reached a cavern vast enough to hold cities. In its center floated a sphere of liquid light, the heart of Eidolon. It radiated power that defied comprehension, a heartbeat older than stars. Mira approached, her voice trembling. "It's beautiful." Elias studied the readings. "This isn't a machine, it's sentient. It's thinking." Rail stepped closer, eyes shadowed with awe and fear. "You touch that thing and you'll rewrite the laws of physics themselves." Mira turned to them both. "Not me. Us. Humanity didn't come this far to bow or burn. We came to learn. To live." Elias whispered, And if it destroys everything, then at least we'll die trying to change. She reached out. The moment her hand touched the sphere, light erupted across the cavern, pure white brilliance that swallowed everything, and then a voice unlike any before filled the air. New input detected. Carbon-based. Impermanent. Adaptive. You carry what the architects lost. Mira's breath caught. What did they lose? The will to become something more. The heart pulsed once, twice, then flared outward, releasing a wave that traveled faster than light spreading across the stars. Every continuum relay, every law node in the galaxy flickered, glitched, and began to change. Yet far away, on Vorthis Prime, the council chambers trembled. The arbiter of light rose, her form fractured by waves of shifting color. The continuum is rewriting itself, she whispered. And across the galaxy millions felt it, the old order unraveling, the new one rising. At the center of it all stood Mira, Elias, and Rael, bathed in radiance, caught between creation and collapse. The heart's voice returned, softer, almost human. Now the choice is yours. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The heart of Eidolon had awakened, and with it, the unthinkable had begun. From the inner worlds of the conquered to the forgotten fringe colonies, the great lattice of the continuum flickered like a dying flame. Ships fell silent. Artificial minds faltered. Laws that once held space and matter in harmony began to waver, uncertain, and at the epicenter, buried within the glowing caverns of Eidolon, 3 humans stood before a power older than civilization itself. Mira Halden felt it inside her bones, like gravity had turned to thought and thought to song. Every heartbeat pulsed in rhythm with the universe. She could feel the galaxy listening. The heart's voice came again, rippling through her mind. You have opened the gate. Now the pattern awaits its author. Elias Kor's voice was hoarse. It's rewriting everything, removing restrictions, rebalancing systems. It's asking for input, Mira. It's asking for us to finish what the architects began. Rael took a step forward. We could stabilize it, restore the continuum before it collapses. Mira looked between them. 2 paths, both terrifying. Restore the old order, she said slowly, and the galaxy returns to safety, but to silence. Complete the rewrite, and Elias met her eyes. We could set every species free. No more hierarchy. No more suppression. Rael's tone hardened, or unleash chaos that destroys us all. The chamber pulsed again as if echoing the debate. The light flared, and for an instant, Mira saw visions. Billions of lives scattered across 1,000 worlds. Farmers tilling dust, children reaching for stars, empires built on obedience and fear. And beneath it all something deeper, hope. She whispered, "What would you choose if you were me?" The heart responded, its tone almost gentle. We chose preservation. It ended us. You are not us. Above Eidolon, fleets gathered. Concord warships encircled the planet, their hulls glinting like steel suns. The presiding arbiter herself had arrived. Her light burned with fury. This world must be sealed. The Terrans have awoken the forbidden. Her lieutenants hesitated. Reports were coming in from every sector. Laws bending, energy flows fluctuating, civilizations rising into awareness. Entire species were suddenly free from constraints they had never known existed. One lieutenant, an Oran of the younger generation, whispered, "But what if they've freed us?" The arbiter's radiance sharpened. Freedom without control is ruin. She turned her light toward the dark planet below. Prepare the cleansing beam. Deep underground, alarms blared through the Aurora's reach. Elias's instruments flashed with warnings. They're charging weapons in orbit. They'll destroy the planet to contain this. Rael's fists clenched. We can't fight a fleet of that size. Mira's gaze turned toward the heart, her expression calm yet filled with fierce certainty. Then we don't fight, we finish. Elias stared at her. You mean complete the rewrite? Mira, if we do this wrong, physics itself could fracture. Space-time could begin again, she finished softly. Rael's voice broke through the rising hum. You're gambling with the galaxy. She turned to him, her eyes bright as flame. No, Rael, I'm trusting it, trusting life to find its way. The heart pulsed, brighter and brighter. Decision required, it intoned. Preserve or evolve. Elias looked at her, voice trembling. Mira, if this fails. She smiled faintly. Then humanity will have done what it always does. Try. Above, the Arbiter's armada aligned. A beam began. To gather, white light, pure and merciless, meant to erase Eidolon from history. Below, Mira extended her hand. The heart reached toward her like liquid light, wrapping her in warmth. The sphere flared, then shattered into threads that wove around her body, embedding patterns of glowing fire beneath her skin. Command accepted, the heart whispered. New framework forming. Elias shielded his eyes as the cavern filled with light. The readings were off every scale. The entire planet's core was resonating in sync with her heartbeat. Mira spoke, not in words, but through thought and intention. Her voice echoed through the heart, across space, through the continuum itself. No more silence. No more fear. Let every being rise to their own potential. Let change be our law. The wave burst outward, an expanding ring of light that surged, up through the crust, through the atmosphere, through the fleets above. The Concord's beam fired at that exact instant. The two forces collided, a spear of control against a flood of freedom, and the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. On Vorthus Prime, the Orion Arbiter felt her light falter. Across distant worlds, the continuum wavered, then reformed, not as one law but as many voices intertwined. Every world now had the power to shape its own rules of existence. The galaxy had become a living, breathing network of self-writing worlds. And on Eidolon, as the energy settled, Mira collapsed into Elias's arms, her body still glowing faintly with starlight. He whispered through tears, "You did it." Her eyes fluttered open. "No," she breathed. We all did. Above them, the Concord fleet's weapons went dark. The Arbiter, watching the changed stars, whispered to no one. They were supposed to be primitive. And for the first time in millennia, she smiled, not in defeat but in awe. And yet they taught us how to begin again. The galaxy was quiet again, but it was not the same silence. It was not the cold, sterile stillness of the old Concord. It was the hush that follows a storm, when the air still trembles with the echo of thunder and new life stirs beneath the ashes. The continuum was no longer one thing. The lattice that had once bound every civilization under a single unyielding order had transformed into something alive, a living web that adapted, responded, learned. Each world now sang its own truth, and together those truths formed a harmony so vast and complex that no single mind could hold it. For the first time in 1,000 ages, the galaxy breathed. And the Aurora's reach drifted above the glowing surface of Eidolon. The planet was radiant now, wrapped in soft gold light. Its darkness was gone. In its place pulsed the steady warmth of rebirth. Mira Halden stood at the viewport, her reflection half light, half shadow. The scars of the heart's touch still marked her skin, faint traces of luminous script that shimmered when she spoke. She was alive but changed. Elias Core entered quietly. He had not slept in days, but his eyes held a peace she had never seen before. "They're calling it the Eidolon Reformation," he said. "Every species is rewriting their laws. The Concord's fleet has withdrawn. The Arbiter herself declared that control without compassion is no control at all." Mira smiled faintly. "That sounds almost human." "Maybe we reminded them what being alive means," Elias said softly. She turned to him. "No, we reminded them what it means to hope." Across the stars, miracles unfolded. On Lirathi's twin moons, scientists danced in celebration as their once restricted engines leapt to new heights. The Oran clans held councils not of war but of song, vowing to guard the fragile peace. Even the Oran worlds, long thought eternal and unchangeable, pulsed with colors never before seen, new emotions born from old light. But for all the beauty, there was uncertainty too. Without the old order, chaos bloomed in corners where fear still reigned. Some sought to rebuild the conquered's iron peace. Others whispered of power and the freedom now unbound. And through it all, one truth held steady: humanity had become the symbol of change. In the great nebular citadel, the same hall where humans had once been laughed at, representatives from 100 species gathered again. The mirrored vaults glimmered with softer light now. When Mira entered, no one laughed. They rose. The presiding arbiter, no longer radiant but calm, addressed the assembly. "We stand at the edge of a new era. The continuum has evolved beyond our control. We must choose not rulers but guardians, voices to guide the balance between freedom and unity." She turned toward Mira. "Ambassador Halden, your species lit this fire. Will you serve as one of those voices?" Mira looked out over the gathered council. Some still afraid, some inspired, all changed. She thought of Earth, of the small blue world that had sent her here with trembling hands and unshakable dreams. "We'll serve," she said, "not as masters, not as saviors, but as reminders that every law, every truth, must make room for the next." The hall filled with quiet resonance, approval, understanding, the kind of peace born not of obedience but of choice. But later, aboard the Aurora's Reach, Elias joined her at the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, each one a story waiting to be written. He asked, "Do you ever wonder if the architects are still out there, somewhere beyond all this?" Mira smiled, the starlight reflecting in her eyes. "Maybe, but if they are, I think they'd be proud. We didn't destroy their legacy. We freed it." Rael approached then, still solemn but different. He had stayed, atoned, and now stood beside them as a protector, not a soldier. "Where to next?" he asked. Mira looked at the map, a galaxy reborn. Worlds pulsed with new signals, calling, singing, reaching out. "Everywhere," she said simply. "We'll go everywhere." As the Aurora's Reach lifted from Eidolon's glowing surface, a soft pulse rippled through the continuum like a heartbeat, and for the briefest moment every sentient being across the galaxy looked up, sensing something beyond comprehension. Not command, not fear, but connection. The galaxy had become what humanity had always dreamed the stars could be, a chorus of 1,000 voices, each distinct, each alive, each free. And far above the nebular citadel, where the new council convened beneath a sky rewritten in fire, a single line of ancient script shimmered across the heavens. It was old, older than language itself, yet now understood by all. Law is not the end of creation. It is the breath between heartbeats. Mira Halden stood at the viewport one last time. The stars burned brighter than ever before. She whispered to herself, words that carried across history, through dust and dream alike. They thought we were primitive. A smile touched her lips. They were right, but they forgot how powerful beginnings can be. The Aurora's Reach vanished into the sea of stars, and thus began the age not of laws but of life reborn.